So I was out for a walk here and I wanted to talk about this because this is one of my top tips for staying healthier longer, is to keep moving, whether it's walking or swimming or doing chair exercises, just exercising your arms, whatever you can do, keep moving. It will really help you in the long run. I really believe that the older I get. I was a big walker in my 40s, but a lot of time in my life I was not big on exercising as much, so now I'm really committed to that. I do exercises at home for about 15 minutes a day, and I also walk, not every day, but almost every day. So again, if you have fitness issues or health issues, please consult your physician. I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not telling you exactly what's the best thing for you specifically, but if you have health issues, ask your doctor first. But otherwise, get out and move if you can. Get out and move until you can no longer move. You know, we used to have a lady that lived here in the complex that I do, and she lived to be about 93, 94. She was still walking right up until right within a few months before she died. So good for her, and I'm sure it contributed to her long life in some way. So that's my message. Keep moving. So I'm back from my walk, and it was hot out there. And I've had to cool down a little bit before I continue this video. So yeah, living healthier longer is a big deal. And I think as we grow older, it becomes a bigger deal. You know, when I was younger, I thought, oh, I don't think I want to live past 60. But of course, as I approached 60, of course I wanted to live. And most people, not all, but most people, no matter how old they get, they just want more time. And we don't just want time, we want quality of life. Quality of life is so important. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to get to the actual 6 tips that I put together from reading various things, watching various things, and coming up with my own ideas on this. If you watched my live stream this past Saturday, I touched on some of this in the live stream. But before I do that, let me tell you a couple of things that made me realize that quality of life was so important. You know, a lot of people can live really to their 90s or beyond, but if they're in such ill health that they can't enjoy life, I think many of them might feel trapped. I'm thinking of back when I used to work as a bereavement counselor. We had weekly meetings with all the teams that dealt with patients who were dying. And there was the doctors and the nurses and social workers and bereavement people like myself. And we'd all sit in these meetings and they would talk about the various people that were on service at that time. And I remember this one story of, and they would always come up in meetings for a long time. You know, normally when people go on hospice, they're only expected to live maybe 6 months, maybe maximum a year. And after that time, if people live past that, it becomes a very challenging situation. So when people generally survived longer than it was expected, it was always a concern in many ways. Well, we had this one woman that they used to talk about in the meetings every week, and this went on for well over a year. So I know she probably did not pass away until maybe a year and a half into it. And the nurses and the social workers would talk about it, and they would say, this person is miserable. She can't really do anything. She was bedbound, but she didn't die. And she eventually got to a point she couldn't even speak. So she couldn't even tell people what she was feeling or how she was feeling. It must have really been horrible for her because they thought she knew what was going on. You know, they would ask her questions and she could like squeeze their hand or whatever, or blink or, you know, but she couldn't talk anymore past a certain point. But she really suffered. And I don't think any of us would want to be in that situation. I don't think any of us want that for anybody. And so I think that's what makes us think about how can we live longer and be healthier in the process. Now, some of this we have no control over. And I speak in large part about genetics here because we don't have any control over genetics. Whatever we inherited, and studies have increasingly shown that people that become what we call super agers, who live to be 90 and above, a large factor in them getting to that point is genetics. It becomes less about a healthy lifestyle by the time you're 90 than it does your genes and what you inherited. So that is what scientists are increasingly beginning to realize, is that that's an issue. But can we do things before we reach that point? If if we hit 90, we've already won the genetic lottery, basically. So at that point, it's still probably good to practice some healthy lifestyle choices, like not smoking and drinking a lot, and maybe not eating a lot of really unhealthy foods. But beyond that, when we're younger than that, that's when the health practices, I think, really matter most. So when you're in your 40s and 50s and 60s, and even into your 70s, doing a lot of healthy lifestyle things will probably increase your chances of living healthier longer. And it's no guarantee, because there's not any guarantee in life. I've known people that ate so amazingly healthy. They didn't eat any preservatives. They didn't eat any processed food. They didn't smoke or drink or whatever. And they still got cancer. They still got various other kinds of illnesses. So some of it you have no control over. I even think of I think there was a famous guy that wrote a book about running back in the 70s, Jim Fixx, I think was his name. And he died of a heart attack. The guy was a runner. He was out there being healthy as possible, dies of a heart attack. So there's some things you are not going to be able to prevent. But if you're going to be on this planet, if you're going to be living in this body, in the body you're in, wouldn't you want it to be as healthy as long as possible? I know that's my aim. That's my goal. It's one of the reasons I'm continuing on my weight loss journey, which is the main thing that is in hampering my health at this point. So I'm sure some of you out there have known people that lived to be really old and were really healthy, and hopefully you asked for their advice. Because a lot of times, I was sharing this on my live stream that, there's all these anecdotes about how, oh, I know this person and he smoked and drank all of his life and lived to be 95. Well, I'm sure that happens, but that is a very rare thing. That is very rare. If you're especially smoking and drinking or doing other kinds of drug use, you're probably shortening your lifespan. And more than that, you're shortening your quality of life. Because quality of life, which is how healthy you are and how much you're able to do, is, to me, even more important. I would rather live fewer years but be healthier most of the time I was alive than spend 20 years completely debilitated, bedbound or whatever. I would obviously, and I think most people would agree with that. So quality of life is always the most important thing to me, more than length of life. My mother had really poor quality of life the last 20 years of her life. She lived to be 90. Now, my mother, if you haven't seen my earlier videos on this about my mother was a late in life alcoholic, and she would have been in even better health and probably made it to 100 if she hadn't been drinking heavily for about 20 years as a senior citizen. So she started drinking a lot probably in her late 50s actually it was probably more than 20 years, because she stopped drinking at 83. She fell because she drank a lot. We didn't find out how much she was drinking until later, but she fell, fractured her spine, her lower spine. She was in the hospital for a while, had to detox. They realized what a problem the alcohol was, and of course she did, basically detox from that, and she never went to rehab, but she was in the hospital and then a nursing home for quite a while, and she couldn't drink, of course. Well, my sister and I arranged to have her, she had the money to do this, thank goodness for her, but she went into assisted living at that point, where they basically, she had meals there. They could even bring them to her room, and she could stay in bed a lot of the time. She didn't have to be up and getting around. She had her own room. She had her own stuff, and she had a nurse that could come in once or twice a week and give her a shower and stuff like that. So anyway, the point is, she couldn't drink when she went into this assisted living. It was a no alcohol area. And so she was off alcohol the last 7 years of her life, which honestly, the doctors had told us when she fell at 83 that if she had not gone into the hospital when she did and gotten treatment and detoxed, that she probably would have been dead within 4 months. So she wouldn't have made it to 90 at that point. So when you go off this stuff, when you go off alcohol, you go off smoking, your body can rebound from that. It can recover from that to some degree. And so that was the case with my mom. And so the last 7 years of her life, she actually was not paralyzed from her spine being fractured. She actually could have been walking around, but she didn't want to do all the rehab for that. And so she ended up being in a wheelchair. She could get up, briefly and stand or walk a couple of steps, but that was about it. So her quality of life wasn't great the last 7 years, but she would have had a much more horrible death if she had stayed on the alcohol, honestly, and it would have been worse for her in the long run. As it was, she had a relatively peaceful death. So that really highlighted to me the importance of the quality of life, that having quality of life is really important. And my mother would have had much more if she'd been willing to do some rehab and been able to walk more and get around more. It would have made her last 7 years a lot better. So that's my little PSA, public service announcement on the dangers of smoking and drinking, which if you've watched my channel, you know that I'm very much against that for people's well-being. My 6 tips, and these I've kind of compiled from, again, things that I think are important with things I've read or seen talked about. But the first one is to keep moving, as I talked about in the opening of this video. Move. You got to move. And even if you can't walk or bicycle or swim or whatever, then do upper body exercises, do chair exercises, do whatever you can do to move at various times throughout the day. Don't sit in one place for more than an hour or so without getting up and at least moving around. It is very important to move. People that become bedbound have a really poor prognosis as far as quality of life. So that's the first thing. The second thing is eat healthier. Make healthier choices. And I'm going to lump into this again, avoid the smoking and the drinking and doing things like that. Probably also avoiding a lot of sugar. If you've been watching my channel, you know I'm off sugar right now. I've periodically been off sugar in my life, and I know that's the best way to go. I know it's much healthier to be off the sugar. So make better choices, eat smaller portions. Studies have shown that we need overall fewer calories and less food as we get older. It's just our metabolisms don't work as well. We just don't need as much food. We can eat half the food we probably did when we were 25, 30 years old. So keep that in mind. I'd say the third thing that contributes to healthy living, especially living longer, is having some social connections. Now, we've touched on that on this channel a lot. That's a sore subject with me in some ways because I don't have really family to connect with any longer. But it is important to have some social connections. If you don't have family, then find some friendships and create connections with people, even if it's online, even if it's through you're doing FaceTime calls or whatever, but have some social connections with people. And barring that, if that's really not possible and you can have a pet and you can afford a pet, then have a pet. But you need that interaction with a living thing. I really do believe it's important to us. And I think people tend to live longer that have those social connections. One of the ways you do that, and this ties into my next one, is be interested in people. You know, we all get frustrated with people and dealing with people, as you all know. We all do. But one thing I've always had is I'm always interested in people. I'm interested in like what makes them tick, what's important to them. You know, yesterday I was sitting with my friend at Starbucks, and there was this young man there who was he was working on his PhD studies in ornithology, which is study of birds. And we were talking, I was feeding my little sparrows. And so he kind of introduced himself and started talking. He gave us all this backstory on the sparrows. And then I just started asking him questions. Like I was really fascinated about what his, a dissertation was on and what he was studying. And, we shared information about, what we were doing. Or I told him I was an anthropologist and also that I had a master's in counseling psychology. And so then he really asked me a lot of questions. And we had this great exchange for like about half an hour, 40 minutes or so. And it's because I was interested. I was curious about this person. Be curious about people. Be interested in people. And that ties into the fourth one here, which is be curious and interested in life. Life's amazing. The world's amazing. Even when it's not going well, it's amazing. It's different. It's challenging, but it's still interesting. And having an interest and curiosity about life and being invested in life, in your interest. I was talking about this on my live stream this past Saturday. That is so, so important. I really believe, and I have not heard researchers talk about this one enough. I think being interested, being invested in just living is just so important. My desire for knowledge has not decreased in my lifetime. I went through an undergraduate education, and then, almost 2 decades later, I did graduate education, and it's more than 2 decades since that, and I'm still interested in learning. Only now I just teach myself. I learn things online or researching them or whatever. So be interested. Be interested. And I know that that's hard if you're battling certain kinds of I know that's not easy for everyone to do, but it is so, so important. So that's the fourth thing. The fifth thing is to have a sense of purpose. This ties in a little bit with the previous one, but I did a video about this. It really is important to have a sense of purpose in your life. Now, for some of you, your sense of purpose may be your family. Maybe your family is, you're interacting with them on a regular basis. Maybe you're there for your grandkids or maybe even great-grandkids. And maybe that is your purpose. That's wonderful. But if you don't have family like I do, then you find a sense of purpose elsewhere. Maybe your sense of purpose is, your friends. Maybe your sense of purpose is continuing to or to volunteer and help people in that way. Maybe your sense of purpose is like me, to have a YouTube channel and reach people that way. Maybe your sense of purpose is to, inspire others by, some amazing thing you do in your life. Whatever it is. Maybe your sense of purpose is to just involve yourself in learning. Maybe that's the purpose for you. But whatever it is, find that sense of purpose. Hold on tight to that sense of purpose and follow it. And be passionate about it. Because that is also a thing that keeps people alive. And it keeps, people, if they have a reason to live, are generally going to stay alive. We've all heard stories about the person that wanted to just live to see their grandchildren, graduate from high school or get married. And very often they do. They'll live as long as when they put it that way and they say, I just want to live long enough for that to happen. Sometimes they die within a year of that happening, but they still fulfilled that sense of purpose. If your purpose is to say, you know, my mother's sense of purpose as she got older, even though she was bedbound the last 7 years, she had a sense of purpose increasingly to make 90 years of age. That was her sense of purpose. Well, it worked. She made it to 90. So it can be relatively small. It can be very large in scope. Whatever it is, build on that sense of purpose. Throw yourself into it. I know that it's everything to me. Having a sense of purpose is just so amazing. It really is. I mean, I cannot even share enough how amazing it is. The last thing, number 6, is to live in the moment. Live in the moment. I know it's really tempting as we get older to just look back all the time and think about all the good times in our life. And we all do it. I do it. Everyone does it. But don't live back there. It's okay to have remembrances and think about it and you know, smile or laugh about it or whatever, but then don't live there. Don't spend every waking moment in the past. And also, don't be projecting too much into the future, because you do that and there's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of fear about that. Don't do that one either, because everybody's future is uncertain. Nobody knows their future. Now, when you're young, you can say, oh, I got tons of time left, whatever. As you get older, you know you don't have tons of time left. So don't go there. You live for now. You live for today. And part of that is a sense of mindfulness about just living in the moment, living in the present. Again, this one is not, in a lot of the research I've seen, it's not, they don't give this enough credit sometimes. It is really important to be really grounded and focused in now, today. What can you do today? What can you think about today? Because you know what? It's all your choice. What you choose to think about is all you. So that's my take on living healthier longer. Please share in the comments below if you have anything else you'd like to add to that list, or thoughts on that, or how that's affected your life. In other words, what you've done, good or bad, that has helped or hurt you. I'd love to read your comments on that. And until next time, be well, be kind, keep moving forward, and take care. Bye.